Please welcome to the stage your moderator for this session, Carlos Silva Filho.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Now we start with the Megacities Solid Waste Management Panel. Just a brief introduction for us who are not familiar with this concept. A megacity is usually defined as an urban area with a total population of more than 10 million people. As of 2017, there are 39 megacities in the world. And 4 of those are represented here today by their officials, so we can talk and learn more about how our industry is operated in these huge urban areas. So it's my great pleasure to invite to the stage our guests for this morning. Ms. Catherine Garcia, Commissioner from New York City, USA. Mr. Jinhao Liu from Shanghai, China, representing the China Urban Construction Design and Research Institute. Mr. Jim McKay, Solid Waste Services Manager for the City of Toronto, Canada. And Mr. José Henrique Penido Monteiro, Assistant to the Director and former President of Rio de Janeiro Municipal Waste Management Company, Brazil. Well, the audience can send the questions to our speakers through the slido.com using the event code #ISWA2017. Please put forward your questions and then we can have an interactive conversation with our speakers. But to warm up, I would like to ask each one of our guests to please tell us briefly how waste management services is carried in your city. How is the structure? How much waste is collected? So we can have an overall idea and then explore a little bit further with the questions from your audience. Catherine, I would like please you to start.
Thank you so much for having me. So in New York City, we have a bifurcated system. The Department of Sanitation is responsible for all of the residential waste and recycling, which is about 10,000 tons of refuse and about 2,000 tons of recycling every day. We do this primarily with rear loaders, and it is house to house in the outer boroughs. I have some routes that are 9 miles long, but it's primarily bagged collection, not automated collection. And it is funded through the property tax. So as shocking as many people have found it that I've talked to, we do not charge for any of our services in the city of New York. And it's not only our collection services and then obviously final disposal, which we contract out, but we're also responsible for cleaning as well as, for those of you who are in northern climes, snow removal. So we start talking about snow removal in August. Then on the other side is the private carting industry, and they collect from all the businesses in the city of New York, and it's roughly the same amount of waste that's disposed of on that side. And that is managed and regulated between the department and the Business Integrity Commission. And to fund the residential side, our budget is approximately $1.6 billion. So our employees are well paid for the job that they do. We do not have trouble recruiting sanitation workers. But I'm thrilled to be here because we're doing a lot of really interesting things about making sure that we're expanding our sustainable footprint. And particularly, probably the showcase is expanding organics curbside collection to, at this point, we will be at 3.3 million people by the end of October. It is voluntary, so not everyone is participating, and some people have converted the bins that we gave out into slides, and there have been some, or beer containers, rolling beer containers. But many of our residents are actually using the service, are really engaged with us, very excited to see compost come back into their communities, whether or not that's for their parks or street cares or community gardens. But that is probably our most ambitious program that we are doing right now. We have a lot of other ideas and focuses around electronic waste, around textiles, but the biggest project we're underway right now is our organics expansion.
Oh, that's great. The organics is something that is really booming all over the world, and I'm happy to learn that New York is taking care of it and improving the service. So let's learn a little bit about Rio de Janeiro. Mr. Penido, please.
Okay, Carlos, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here in this charming city. Rio de Janeiro has a population of about 7 million inhabitants, and it's a very complicated city because of this 7 million, we have almost 2 million living in what we call favelas or communities, and mostly in hills, and it's very, very difficult to accomplish complete waste management service to all our population. But who does this in Rio? Conlurb. Conlurb is the waste management company, it's a public company belonging to the municipality. I worked there for the last 40 years, so I'm a part of the life of this company, and I'm very pleased to be that. And what we do, besides the normal waste management service as street cleansing and collection, transfer and waste final disposal, we do many, many other things. As Conlurb is very powerful, we have 22,000 employees and a budget of about $600 million per year. The mayor uses Conlurb for many other things that has nothing to do with waste management, but we do that. I can mention at least, not total service we do, but trimming of 600,000 public trees in the city. Not only trimming, cutting the branches, but also transferring, using part of it in furnaces and finally disposing it in the landfills. We take care of 1,100 public schools of the municipality, inside and outside. We have to clean it. We clean also and make a very good service in hospitals from the municipal network, health network. There's about 7 big hospitals, and we do a complete service of hygienization of the hospital, including the surgery rooms, everything. We clean also the lakes of Rio, the surface of the lakes. We have boats to do that. We take care of more than 1,500 squares in the city. We are responsible for the maintenance of the toys in this square. So a lot of things we do besides the waste management, but we do that with pleasure because we have many people, many equipment. And we do this also, the collection service are done in a very unique way. I think it's the only city in Brazil that does it that way, is we don't contract the services and pay by weight collected. We rent trucks. We rent all kind of equipment, front-loader trucks, tractors, everything we rent with the operator or the driver and maintenance and fuel included. And the crew are ours employees. And this is very important because we need that the employees put the shirt of our company, and they are proud of it. They have, of course, a bigger salary, bigger wage than the other similars in this function in the city. And so they are proud, and the population consider that waste management in Rio is the best public service held to them. And we have a goal now. All waste produced in Rio goes directly to one single sanitary landfill, which is a state-of-the-art landfill. We are doing very well with 2 liners and the grid to detect any kind of leakage between the 2 liners. Everything is doing very well. But we are not taking care of the environment. I mean, we should start to divert waste from the landfill, as New York is doing with organic fraction. So we have a goal to, until 2021, to divert 27% of all the waste that is going to our only landfill. And doing what? We will start this year a MRF, a material recovery facility, to recover with more efficiency than the curbside collection, recover recyclables. We are about to finish and start in operation in the end of October. It's small in terms of Rio, 50 tons per day biomethanization plant. And we are already studying. I was last week in Cologne, Germany, trying to make feasible, economically feasible, huge biomethanization plant to divert also organic fraction from the landfill. Besides that, we start construction and demolition recovery plant. It's already running, and we will do another one in another closed landfill. And besides that, we have a closed landfill, a huge closed landfill of very known as Gramacho. There was a film from Vicky Muniz telling about the story of the waste pickers. And we have installed, through a concession, a huge recovery and purifying biogas from this landfill. It's, I think, is the biggest in the world. It's an American technology from an American company, and it's purifying the biogas recovery from this closed landfill and sending it through a pipeline of 6 kilometers to a refinery from Petrobras nearby. So we have a range of new technologies being developed and big challenges also. One of them, just to finish my speech, is that we want to turn our fleet until 2025 all to electric cars. We have already tested one in Brazil, done by manufacturing China, and is doing very well, totally electric car, and this will avoid emissions, contaminants to the atmosphere, noise during the collection service, and I think this is going to be very well. So that's in brief what we are doing in Rio.
Thank you, Penido, and congratulations. Those seem to be very ambitious goals to be accomplished, and we would like to follow up and in a future ISWA Congress to learn how the targets have been accomplished. So, turning from the Americas to Asia, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about how waste management services are carried in your city.
Okay. I come from Beijing, China. I want to talk about Beijing waste management. In Beijing, the population is over 20 million people, and we produce about 20,000 tons per day waste. And in Beijing, we build municipal solid waste facilities from about 18 years ago. At first, we built a lot of landfill, about 10 landfills. From about in 2080, Beijing host Olympic game, and at that time we have the first waste-to-energy plant, waste-to-energy plant with the capacity 1,600 tons per day. It's the first one. In my opinion, in Beijing, we should build more incineration plants waste-to-energy plants. Now we have 5 waste-to-energy plants put into use, and we are built another 5 these kinds of plants. For a super megacity, a large of municipal solid waste produced every day, we can't find enough land to landfill this waste. So waste-to-energy plants is very important in China. In China, municipal collection and treatment is charged by MHUD. That means Ministry of Housing, Urban, Rural Development. I worked in COCD, a consulting and design company. It's a state-owned, served for the MHUD. In China, we met a serious waste problem about 20 years ago. So we tried all kinds of technology. In the end, we find the first step, landfill is needed. The second step, we should build a lot of enough incineration plants. And the third step, we can develop all kinds of wonderful ideas about zero waste, 3 R's, and sustainable development, and so on. So in Beijing, in China, we have built about 1,800 landfills in China, and 300 incineration plants. And we are build more these kinds of basically waste treatment facilities. So, in my opinion, in Megacity, we should build these kinds of facility first, and then we can talk about others. So it's my opinion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liu. It's like incredible how to manage such amount of waste in this huge urban area, and growing population and traffic restrictions, and the concern on the final destination is one of like the main issues that you have to really address. And as you said, Beijing is taking care of it through the waste to energy plants, and some more to come. So let's come back to Americas, and I'll ask Jim to talk a little bit about Toronto, Canada.
Thank you, Carlos. Good morning, everyone. In Toronto, we have a system that's divided. The residential material and some small commercial material is collected by the municipality. The remaining is collected by the private sector. The city manages approximately 1 million tons of material every year with an operating budget of around $400 million. So based on quick math, probably one of the more expensive programs up here. We have a fully integrated waste management system that's guided by our long-term strategy, which some of you just saw we're quite proud of, won gold this morning. Thank you, Swana. So it's a fully integrated waste management system. We collect 3 streams from the curb. We have a garbage stream, a recycling stream, which is a single stream cart-based system, and a food waste organics program collected curbside from both single-family and multi-residential buildings. Those materials are all collected now to the extent that we can by fully automated collection vehicles powered by compressed natural gas as we convert our fleet over to CNG. The recycling material goes to a state-of-the-art recycling facility that's located inside the city. Our green bin organics food waste material goes to one of 2 of our anaerobic digestion facilities, which we are now in the process of starting a journey down a permitting path to be able to harness the biogas that's produced to fuel our CNG trucks. So in the next couple of years, we'll actually be producing our own fuel from the material we collect to go back out and collect more material. So we're quite proud of a mini version of a closed-loop circular economy. The remaining residual material goes to a landfill site. Again, for some of you just saw, another award winner this morning. manages around 400,000 tons of material a year at our landfill site. So it's a fully integrated system. In addition to the 3 streams that are collected, garbage is collected every other week. Organics is collected every week. We made that switch a few years ago, which has been extremely successful. Our residential single-family program is running around 65% diversion. That's not including the contamination, so a pretty high diversion rate. Our multi-residential rate is considerably lower at around 26, 27% diversion. So obviously one of the challenges that we're working on there. Our contamination rate is not where we want it to be. We're running 25, 26%, again, in a cart-based program, fully automated system. So we're working through some of these larger urban challenges. We also do collect on an on-call basis household hazardous waste, mattresses, bulky materials, white goods, so electronics, quite a broad range of materials. And we're now working on a strategy for textiles. We've got programs around to manage the majority of the material in the garbage stream now. The next lowest hanging fruit on the waste stream composition is textiles. So that's the next program that we're looking at, and looking at it through a slightly different lens where it may not be a service that we provide, it may be a service that we simply help to enable through other providers like non-for-profit, charity-type organizations which are already out there doing that. So our long-term strategy that we've got is extremely important to us. It's taking us from simply being a service provider into a resource manager and really looking at the first 2 R's and the 3 R's, the reduce and reuse. What is the municipal role in that, and how do we actually prevent waste from being generated in the first place as a municipality? So we've got the recycling systems in place, the organic systems in place. Now we're looking at how do we actually prevent it from getting into those systems in the first place. So trying to take that next step forward.
Thank you, Jim. It's amazing to see that this wide range of programs are in place, and you have already achieved 65% diversion from the residential fraction. It's really, really incredible in a city, mega city like Toronto. We have some questions from the audience. The first one is direct to Catherine. They want to know what gains can you anticipate from the franchising model, and won't franchising cost more to consumers?
So New York City currently, the private carters engage with businesses directly, and there isn't any geographic constraints around that interaction. So from the data that the private carters provided to us, we found that some of them were driving their trucks very, very long distances. And so constraining the geography based on the analysis was a 68% reduction in vehicle miles traveled, and therefore the amount of diesel, the reduction in diesel, there are a huge number of environmental benefits. In addition, we actually found something that I thought I guess if I'd really thought about it, I would have felt differently, but very small businesses were usually paying more than large businesses on a per pound basis. And so based on our research, we think there will be significant environmental benefits of a zone system, and we think that there'll be more clarity, particularly for small businesses, around what it is, the services that they can expect. But we are in the middle of this process, and I know that we've been engaging with much of the private carting sector as well as different industries across the city to make sure that we do this well and we do this the right way. As I've said to many of them, I know that it has to get off the street. I mean, at the end of the day, the final backup will be the Department of Sanitation if we don't do it right. And so I think that the other thing that we've looked at based on our research is it's not necessarily true that people pay more. It varies across the country depending on what the requirements are of the system. So, you know, we are fully engaged, and we think that it's an exciting opportunity in the city of New York.
Great. And when do you expect to have like first results? And
so we are actually on a very long transitional period. We anticipate having a draft plan by the end of next June that will have taken into account all of the stakeholders and their insights into it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine. Liu, talking about a mega city like Beijing, are there awareness campaigns put in place by the municipality to help people to reduce the waste generated to divert from the mainstream?
Okay. I want to talk about this topic, make some preparation. On the recycle of resources, many friends, foreign friends, and some Chinese experts have a great misunderstanding that China's waste is not classified and is a mixed collection. In fact, it's wrong. In China, there are two completely independent systems for resources and garbage. One is resource recovery system, which is marketed by the head of Ministry of Commerce. It's not by Maherd. Well, the other is garbage collection and transportation system. This is charged by Maherd. We have two systems. Municipal solid waste that is collected by Chinese sanitation workers is actually a kind of residue. It's not the all waste we generate. This waste transport to the incineration plants or landfill sites. In this kind of residue, with the paper is rare, and scrap metal is very few, almost no waste plastic bottles and no waste cans. Well, most of these resources are recovered in world chain of the whole waste management chain, from the source and from the transfer station, from the vehicles, from all kinds of places we recycle these materials. In accordance with the world's rulers, Beijing's recycle rate of waste is at least 30%. So it should be said that Beijing's recycle has a well performance. Beijing's success lies in traditional Chinese culture. Encourage hard work, encourage hardship. So there are some low-income groups willing to give up a decent life and engage in source recycle and get money. The challenge of future resource recycle is to mobilize everybody, not just a group of pickups. Everybody should recycle your resources. The power of recycling is not only the driver of recycling is not only economic interest, but also should consider the meaning of society and the value of low carbon. Last year, December 21, Xi Jinping said that the waste classification is related to relation to the 1 billion people. All Chinese people should pay more attention to waste classification. So now in China, from the central to local governments, all level governments pay more attention to this issue. This is a new opportunity for us to try all kinds of possibilities to find more experience and practice in war waste. At this time, I come to Baltimore and find the single stream recycle system. I feel it's very interesting, and I'm learn about it. I hope I can learn from this conference more information. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liu. Talking about recycling, Jim, what is one major lessons you've learned that has helped make the Toronto's programs successful on recycling, diversion? What do you think it's like the main lesson learned, and what would be like an advice to our audience on that?
Well, I think over the last few years we've probably learned a lot more about what not to do or what doesn't work than what actually does work, which is okay. I think probably one of the biggest lessons that we've learned recently is we're doing really well with single-family residential in the suburban communities. It's the high-density, high-rise, multi-residential units that we're having a real problem with. And I think part of the challenge that we had is we tried to apply a single-family model to multi-residential buildings, and that has not worked. And as we so all of our multi-residential buildings now have organics programs, they have recycling programs. None of them are working very well. And again, because we tried to apply that model, what we're finding now is we really have to go building by building to identify exactly what their needs are. The two buildings can look identical, but if the demographic of the population in those buildings is different, how you communicate, how you educate, how you encourage them to go through that behavior change process, to start recycling, to start organics management, it can be completely different in different types of buildings. So we're going building by building. A recent statistic released is more than 50% of the population of Toronto was not born in Canada. These are first-generation immigrants, so we're dealing with a lot of language barriers, a lot of cultural differences. But what we're really learning is when you go building by building, we ran a great program last year that I'll give you an example, where we actually, with the support of the mayor, it was called the Mayor's Towering Challenge, and it was a competition amongst buildings to identify who could come up with the best ideas to how to improve their waste diversion in their buildings. And one of the great ideas that I'll share with all of you that we're starting to see, and we're actually going to set up some pilots to see just how big of a difference this is we're dealing with buildings built in the 60s or 70s when it was just garbage going down a chute. And we're trying to evolve a waste diversion program when the buildings stay stagnant in their design. One of the simple changes that some of these buildings made was they switched their garbage chute to an organic chute. Everything else you had to carry down to the garbage room. And some of our best performing buildings right now on the diversion side are the ones that have made that simple switch. And the tenants of the building love it because the organic material is the yucky stuff that nobody wants to keep around very long. That's the stuff that goes down the chute. Everything else, the dry material, you can take down and you can sort. So we're trying to figure out, building by building, looking at it through a different lens, what are the different things that we can do in these multi-residential buildings to actually improve diversion. And we're starting to see a few glimpses of hope, I think, that we will be able to accomplish something.
I think that's been New York City's experience. So we rolled out organics. You sort of are automatically enrolled if you're in a single-family home. But apartment buildings, we make them apply for the service. And so we have some great success stories. We just enrolled a very large development, Stuyvesant Town, which is 110 buildings and 30,000 people. But from what we've learned is if you do not have the custodian or the super or the porter involved, you don't succeed. Some of my best performing recycling districts are very high density, but those buildings are involved and really committed. Well, their residents want them to be committed to sustainability practices.
So it's much more about people's engagement and awareness rather than enforcement from the waste.
It's very hard to enforce on tenants. It's actually about the building management. In large apartment buildings, for us, it's about building management.
Yeah.
It's not about the residents as much. You can always do education, but it's about the building management.
Great, thanks. Penido, we heard about the waste-to-energy plants in Beijing, the anaerobic digestion plants in Toronto. Is Rio open to new technologies for waste management?
Absolutely. You know that because we suffer in Brazil a huge rejection from the society against waste to energy. So I think we have to change our speech about waste to energy. And we think in Conlur that we have to take from the waste as much as we can in terms of good things like organics to produce compost, produce biogas, generate energy from organics. And we will never have, as Toronto has and New York's trying to have a curbside collection for organics. We live in a tropical country. Our temperature during winter is 30 degrees. So nobody wants to keep in their kitchen organic fraction for 7 days. This will produce leachate, this will produce bad odors. So we quit. We'll never do that. And what we are doing is convincing the big generators of organic fraction, like markets, supermarkets, and green markets, we have an incentive to them to dump this material separately in our transfer station. In that way, we can profit it and doing compost or biomethanization as we are doing. But your question specifically, of course, we are thinking on waste to energy. And we have already planned, we are trying to license one, but through a concession. The problem is that we know that we will face a very tough rejection from society because there's a climate against this kind of thing in Brazil. The point is that we will emphasize that, listen, instead of taking this material that is the rest of the rest, we have used the organic fraction, we have extracted as much as possible the recyclables. So there's always a rest, a refuse of the refuse. What do you think? Talking to the society, what do you think? What do you prefer? Taking this material to the landfill or use it in a thermic way to produce energy? We cannot speak in incineration, not at all. So it's a thermic process. And then, of course, this sounds much more acceptable by the society, and that's the way we will choose. But we definitively, we are thinking and planning a waste to energy, but for the reject of the reject.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Liu, does Beijing have a waste strategy in place, and what are the targets to be reached in the coming years?
The target?
Yes, a strategy, an overall strategy for waste management in the city. Is it in place? And what would be the targets? Like how much do you want to recycle, to recover, and to reduce from the waste generation?
Yes, we have a recycle rate is about 35.
Nowadays?
Nowadays it's about 30. We hope we can reach 35% in Beijing. In fact, in recent 10 years, the generation of in Beijing is rise about 20%. So it's a rapid increase. So we need more incineration plants. That means waste to energy plants to reduce in this kinds of waste. Now we are build a new material recycling center to separate some waste. But in Beijing, what we care about is not just reduce. We care more about harmless treatment. So we can see waste on the street or nearby. In fact, there are a lot of rural waste. We find it's hard to handle them. So the most important things in Beijing is we lack of landfill capacity because the price of the land in Beijing is very high. So I feel maybe this problem is the first things. We are find new landfill areas. Just like 20 years, like New York, you transport your waste by train to 1,000 kilometers away. But in Beijing, we can't do this. So it's a good problem. And now we care more about incineration plants. We think we can rely on them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Liu. Jim, yesterday ISWA released a new report about the fourth industrial revolution and waste management, talking about driverless trucks, sensors in bins. Is Toronto planning to incorporate such new technologies into the waste management system?
We are, yes. It's going to take time, but absolutely. We just started installing telematics systems in all of our collection vehicles so we can get much better information on the activities of our collection trucks at any given time. But we are certainly looking at how do we better leverage technology? How do we better leverage data? First of all, collect it, and then how do we analyze that to improve system performance? We're working through a process right now of redefining how we measure performance. We've got this waste diversion target, but with lightweighting of packaging and changing of products and product design, waste diversion is becoming a bit of an archaic metric. So we're moving more towards kilograms per capita or different types of measures, different ways of looking at the system that reflect the changes that we're seeing in the system, I think. But these types of technological advances, absolutely, and I was having a conversation with a colleague last night. My concern is we're actually falling behind in the industry. Technology is actually moving a lot faster than we are right now. And as a municipality, my concern is we may actually be farther behind than our private sector counterparts. So as a municipality, if we don't move quicker than what we are right now, we could actually be putting ourselves at risk by not having access to same type of information, type of data, type of system performance understandings and costs that some of our private sector service providers do. So I think we need to move much quicker, but certainly my municipality, and I'm sure some of the others have the same experience with moving, being innovative and progressive in a municipal environment can be a challenge sometimes.
Oh, thank you. Catherine, is New York doing something on that direction, like also mobile apps for the citizens to monitor the services?
So we have GPS technology in all of our vehicles. We turn it on during snow operations, so you can find out when we plowed your street last. And we can track that down to a route-by-route level. In terms of looking at automated vehicles, one of the things for New York City that will be different is that we don't have automated collection. We have the sanitation workers still lift every single bag into the truck. So I'm still going to need them, even if there was never a driver. We are mainly looking at safety technology for the drivers so that they have their blind spots covered and provide them more turn-by-turn directions because we think that that's going to be very important moving forward. But there's definitely going to be a role for the sanitation worker moving forward. But there's some things that happen in the waste industry, and I don't know if this has happened in Toronto, but we suddenly saw a huge increase in derelict vehicles. Huge. And I was like, why is this happening? And so I do have a bunch of little data analysts, and the actual correlation, so it's like how things happen to the waste industry that are completely unrelated to anything we're doing, is the changes in subprime auto loans had made it so that it was more cost effective to dump your car and you'd get a really cheap loan on a new car. Not sure you can afford it, but it's creating all of this movement into abandonment. Nothing to do with anything that's happening in the waste industry, but how you can be impacted by things that are happening in the broader economy.
Okay, yes, sure. And I think that one point to these improvements is related also to costs, because municipalities need to afford such investments and the running costs on that. And this would be my questions to you, Penido. How does the waste system in Rio is financed?
Yeah, we have, of course, we have huge problems with money because our company is big, a lot of employees, lack of money. This is a common problem of all municipalities in Brazil. What we do, we have a tax, but only tax for collection, not for the whole system, because in Brazil, to impose a tax, it has to be measured. So we made an estimation, region by region of the city, evaluating the waste generated by each household, and then we provide different taxes for commercial units and residential units, and depending on the local, where these houses are. But this covers about 15% of the total cost of Conluve. But we have to think that from this $600 million budget, not all of them is dedicated to waste management. Part of them is for other services that are not related at all to waste management. So what we are doing to minimize costs, especially in the current constraint, economical constraints of all the country, we are trying to optimize, for instance, the routes of the collection trucks. And this, we have a very sophisticated system, monitored, all the equipment are monitored in the weight collected, the kilometers run, everything is very well controlled and monitored. But we are, the further step is more difficult, how to rearrange the routes and optimize the routes to minimize fuel consumption, problems with traffic jams, and so forth. But everywhere in Conluve now, we are trying to reduce costs because this is one of the main issues in our company today.
Liu, talking about routing and traffic jams, does traffic problems affect the waste management services in Beijing? How the municipality deals to avoid traffic jams and to put the service in place?
In fact, in Beijing, we have information system about the whole collection systems. Every vehicle, we have a machine. It's about GPS or Beidou system. Is located. So we have an information room. It's a big screen, and then we can find every vehicle's location, and we can plan the route. So it's we call it is a smart city. Means smart waste management systems. So these kinds of system is a lot of cities have these kinds of information technology systems. So it's good help.
Okay.
Yeah, and one really easy way to make it is you start your day at 6 a.m. And you can actually get almost anywhere in the city starting at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
So.
Sure, absolutely. And Jim, one thing that we are talking about during the Congress is circular economy. Do you think that municipal waste management in any way can contribute to implement this circular economy model?
I think we're certainly a part of it. I think we have to be a part of it in terms of how we manage our waste. But I think it's also, we're just part of a much larger conversation, which is a global conversation around how do we achieve these circular economy initiatives. I think purely from a waste management perspective, there are things that we can be doing constantly. I think about what we're trying to do with textiles now, to pull textiles out of the waste stream and reintroduce them as a valuable product again. Wherever we can take materials out of the waste stream and utilize them as a resource and do something of value with them, I think that will contribute to a circular economy. We're in an interesting situation in Ontario right now. Toronto's a city in the province of Ontario where we are moving now forward with extended producer responsibility as well. So over the next few years, our recycling systems that are currently delivered by municipalities will in the future be delivered by producer organizations, so the Loblaws, the Unilevers, the Procter & Gamble's of the world, or the Walmarts. And I think that has an important perspective on driving the circular economy, because it's going to force the companies that are putting the products and packaging into the marketplace are now also going to be held accountable for management at the end of the life of the product. And I'm hoping that as part of a circular economy concept that we will start to see changes in how those products and packaging are produced, so that there is a much easier, more efficient way of managing them at the end of life. So I think there's an example, and municipalities for the most part are in favor of this move. You know, for those of you from Europe, you see that this is some pretty commonplace in Europe right now. It should reduce our costs overall as a municipality, but ultimately the environmental gain of doing something like this really should improve the environmental performance of the system overall.
And do you feel that the producers are open to cooperate and implement this joint project and joint solution?
Well, there's open and cooperative, and then there's legislated that they have to. We have a combination of both right now. So they've been told by the regulator that they are going to have to engage in this type of process. But what we are seeing is the producers who will be captured under the current system coming forward and saying, yes, we want to do this. We're also seeing new producers who aren't currently part of the recycling system. So the hot beverage cup container organizations, coffee pods, the single-use coffee pods. We're seeing those types of companies coming forward saying, in this new legislation, we want to be a part of this too. We want our material recycled. We're willing to front the cost of having that material recycled. So I think, yes, they are coming to the table, and the great thing is even more of them are coming to the table, which ultimately as a municipality means that's less material going to our landfill site at the end of the day.
Yeah, great. So it's good to hear about that. Catherine, people from the audience wants to come back to the financing of the waste system, and they sent a question. Has New York City ever considered a user fee for the collection services?
So I think historically we have not considered a user fee. We have recently, or in the process of engaging a consulting firm to look and see whether that would be practical in New York City. Really not to drive down our costs per se, but to make sure that we're providing the right incentives to people. What we know from what occurred in the water industry in New York City is that when people actually had to pay for the amount that they consumed, they went and fixed their leaks. They went and made sure that they were not just wasting it. And so we're hopeful that if we can find something that is fair and equitable, it's very challenging in a primary rental market to do this, that we could put something in place. But it's very early, and as folks here have talked about in terms of the challenges with public embrace of extended producer responsibility laws or waste-to-energy facilities, none of this is easy politically, and something that we really are going to have to make the case over the very long term. So our desire is not really to be trying to earn money, but in trying to make sure we're sending the right signals to the residents of New York. And it's similarly, like, one of the reasons I think we look at extended producer responsibility is sometimes there are relatively simple things that manufacturers can do that make municipalities' lives so much easier. And they just haven't thought about it because that wasn't part of their goal or their incentive structure. And I think that that's something that really needs to change.
No, and if each one really implements like its own responsibilities and play its own roles, for sure the system for all citizens will be much less costly than it is today. I think it's a very important role municipalities have to play into this discussion in order to make each one accomplishing its own responsibility. It's good. And Penido, you talked about the cleaning of lakes in Rio de Janeiro, and you have boats to do it. And another issue that we are dealing here at the Congress, and we will release the first ISWA report, is about marine litter. And Rio is famous for its beaches and so on. How does Conlurb prevent marine litter or works to prevent marine litter?
Well, actually, we don't prevent. We try to clean it. We have 58 kilometers of beaches that are cleaned.
58?
58 kilometers of beaches, the city, which has to be cleaned every single day. And during the summer, now it's a habit, a new habit of the Cariocas to stay in the beach until 10, 11 o'clock night, because all the beaches are with good light, so people love to stay during summer and producing waste, of course. So the time we have to clean the beaches are being squeezed. So as much as people use the beach and produce waste, less we have time to do it. We have done many campaigns for trying to sensibilize people to avoid leaving their waste in the beaches, but it's difficult. Sometimes you have 1 million, 2 million people using the beaches at the same time during the summer. And people don't remember, don't care about our beaches. It's really a terrible issue for us. But we have to deal with that.
Yeah, it's something that we really need to be concerned, because yesterday during the opening ceremony, Ms. Nishida from US EPA presented the data from the UN that if we don't do nothing in 2050, there will be more plastic in the oceans than fish. So I think that not only cleaning, because it's a massive service, but also preventing that. We are coming to the final part of our panel. We are running out of time. So I'd like each one of you, and using a question sent by the audience, to briefly resume. In 5 to 10 years, how do you see waste management in each one of the city you are working for, and what should be like the path to move forward? Leo, please.
Okay, in the next 5 to 10 years in Beijing, we will have about 10 incineration plants with the capacity over 20,000 tons per day. So it's enough. Then we will control our people. We have a master plan to move some people to around of the Beijing. The Beijing city the government will move to Tongzhou in the east of Beijing. And some people, such as big company and some university, will move to the south of the Beijing. It's the Xiong'an city. So Beijing will control its people, then control its waste generation. So our facility is enough. Then we will try our best to reduce those waste paper and the waste plastic and reach a high level. So then we can talk about the others. So Beijing is always a clean city, but we will make it sustainable development. Okay.
Thank you, Leo. Catherine, please.
So I think that the real change will be a cultural change in New York City of stopping discussions about waste and really thinking about it as resources, and that the outlets that you're having are all about what is going to be sustainable over the long term. We have in place long-term contracts to make sure we can deal with our growth, but we've also seen that we're going to continue to work with the nonprofit sector on new programs and new access to help make sure that people are reusing before they're even giving it to us.
Thank you. Benito, please.
Well, I think 5 to 10 years, a very close horizon for a city like Rio. We will probably be doing the same. I mean, the trend will be to reduce as much as we can the waste that goes to the landfill. We will do our best efforts to do that. I think in the long term, more than 10 years, things will change from the producers of the goods in general. It has to change. The goods has to be produced in a more environmentally sound way. That means that it will be easier to recycle, to recover, to reuse. And this is, I think, in my point of view, will be the future of the waste. So you will reduce the waste, not necessarily reduce the consumption, but reduce the waste of what we consume.
Oh, thank you, Benito. Jim, please.
Yeah, and I think similar to what Catherine said, it's all about behavior change and continuing that process along. As much as we have an organics program in our multi-residential buildings, it's only been out for 3 or 4 years. The recycling programs have taken decades to get to where they are today. So continuing down that path. We've got a number of sort of new initiatives that we're working on. We're flaring all of our biogas right now from our landfill site, from our anaerobic digestion facilities. That's a resource that we need to be recovering and injecting back into the pipeline, both for the environment and purely as a revenue stream to us to help reduce costs. We've got 160 closed landfill sites inside the municipal boundaries of the city. That's a huge number, and these are traditionally seen as liabilities. I see them as opportunities. These are essentially brownfield sites that nobody's figured out what to do with yet. So we'll be working on some research to try and figure out in a property market that is skyrocketing right now. We've got acres of closed landfill sites that are worth millions of dollars right now, purely from a property market perspective. So a lot of sort of tweaks to the system. It's already pretty advanced. And then in the middle of all this, looking at how do we actually take our entire recycling program that's part of a fully integrated waste management system and extract it and hand it over to another party will be an interesting discussion over the next few years as that evolves.
Oh, thank you. So we come to an end of our panel from this morning, and I would like to ask you to give a big thanks to our speakers and the contributions they made to us. Thank you. Thank you. And let's continue with the program of the ISWA WASTECON 2017 Congress. Thank you very much.